Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I got 3 movies for you. The first one is a request from a subscriber, and the second 2 are a duology of action-adventure films which haven't really got a lot of press here in Australia or even in America for that matter, but they both kick ass. The first one is the one I have a slight problem with. One of our subscribers, Friday, on the live stream I did last weekend, suggested that I cover a film called The Nines from 2007, directed by John August and starring Ryan Reynolds, Hope Davis, Melissa McCarthy, Elle Fanning and Octavia Spencer. I was kind of wondering why I hadn't seen this film, but now I've seen it I know why. And by the way, thank you Friday for pushing me to watch this film. I'm not always going to watch films that I totally enjoy, but it's good to step outside your comfort zone and step outside of the films you normally like. This one's got a 3-part structure, and in that structure, Ryan Reynolds plays 3 different guys living in Los Angeles whose lives overlap somehow, even though they do seem to be in 3 slightly parallel universes. I'm going to do spoilers for this at the end, but I'm going to vague talk around the movie first. Part 1's called The Prisoner, and it's about a guy called Gary, who's a television actor who is the star of a TV series called Crime Lab, and he has a bit of a breakdown. His girlfriend leaves him, he burns his stuff in his barbecue, he goes to the rough part of LA, finds somebody who will sell him crack, does the crack with a sex worker played by Octavia Spencer in a cheap motel, and then goes driving and crashes his car. He ends up under house arrest. He's got one of those ankle bracelets on. His publicist, played by Melissa McCarthy, he's pretty pissed off with him.
Are there reporters out front?
A few. Not Hugh Grant level, more like Robert Downey Jr. when he broke into that family's house and slept in the kid's bed.
And he's got to dry out and kind of stay sober until all this stuff blows over. There's a crisis management thing going on. He's put into a house that's rented where he needs to stay until everything's dealt with. He gets kind of bored. He orders food. He talks to the neighbour, played by Hope Davis, who's flirting with him. And he starts seeing the number 9 in a lot of different places, in a lot of different things. And it becomes something of an obsession for him. He ends up leaving the house and breaking his parole. And the publicist, played by Melissa McCarthy, stays with him until something happens and he shifts into the next universe. This one is playing a character called Gavin, who's a TV producer and writer who is doing a TV show called Knowing. They've gone to pilot. They've got Melissa McCarthy, the actress, to be the star of the pilot. Then the showrunner for the studio is played again by Hope Davis in a very different role. She is the most valuable player in this movie. She does a lot with 3 very different characters. This second part, which is called reality television, is shot and framed as a fly-on-the-wall reality television documentary, where a film crew is following Gavin through the process of getting the pilot greenlit, having it filmed, and then waiting for the reaction of the studio. There's some bits and pieces of in-house Hollywood stuff. There's a lot of improvised dialogue in this part, which really makes it feel a lot better than it would otherwise. And we get a little bit of Melissa McCarthy really showing her A game as a dramatic actress, but in a weird role of playing a version of herself, who is the star of this pilot and will be the star of the series, and who is married to her real-life husband, Ben Falcone. They talk about buying a new house based on the pilot and the possibility of it going to series. And then the studio comes back with notes. And Gavin starts seeing 9s in his world. Reality starts breaking down for him as well. Part 3, he plays a character called Gabriel, again in a slightly parallel universe, who's a game designer. He goes on a hike with his wife, played by Melissa McCarthy, and his daughter, played by Elle Fanning, who also turns up as a minor character in previous versions of the universe. They go on a hike, and they come back to the car and find the battery's flat because they've left the interior light on. They can't get a cell phone signal, so he runs down the road to get a cell phone signal and meets a woman walking along the road, played by Hope Davis, who doesn't want to be anywhere near a man in the woods. It's that bear in the woods, man in the woods thing. Well, before there was a bear in the woods, man in the woods meme. And eventually she agrees to take him back to the campground where there's a cell phone signal, he can get help. But it doesn't go quite that way because there's a twist in that as well. Reality starts breaking down and things come to an unusual climax. Okay, spoiler from here on in. Ryan Reynolds' character is God, and for 4,000 years, God's been cosplaying as various characters in the universe. There are 90 universes, in fact, and he has forgotten that he's God. The characters played by Hope Davis and a couple of other characters who are very much NPCs in this piece, are trying to remind him that he's God because they need him to do something. There's some kind of crisis in the greater universe and they need God to put on his big boy pants and help them with it. Yeah, okay. This one was framed even on Wikipedia as science fiction, but it's not. It's a theology thing. And I don't like that kind of bait and switch. I think that genre hopping, particularly when one part of that genre has very much an ideological component, is dishonest. It does not at all land well with me. I don't like being conned. I don't like the idea of, yes, there's a God and the universe is this, and the God looks like Ryan Reynolds, and his addiction to the 90 universes is compared to a video game addiction. It's facile. And it's simplistic, and it rubbed me the wrong way. I'm sure there are many people, Franny probably included, who like this movie. But for me, it was one of those movies that I find annoying. It's no surprise to me that John August's career has gone nowhere since this movie. Of course, Ryan Reynolds has gone on to great success. Octavia Spencer has. Hope Davis, not so much, though she is an incredibly fine actress. And Melissa McCarthy's career has kind of gone like that and is now going like that. It's very self-indulgent, and it assumes that Hollywood and Los Angeles are the center of the universe. I've been there, and it's not. I'm sorry, Franny, but I didn't like this one. And it's okay that I didn't. I don't have to agree with everybody on the movies I cover on the channel. The movie did elicit an emotional response from me, even if it was severe annoyance. Not going to watch that one again, but I still appreciate people suggesting things to me, particularly when they make a donation to the channel to do so. Keep making suggestions, everybody, Franny included. I don't mind getting the suggestions. I'm going to cherry pick, of course, from those suggestions. But I don't mind stepping outside my comfort zone. And I don't mind people alerting me to movies I knew nothing about. And just to punctuate it, it's just started raining. Hollywood timing. So I'm going to go on to the two movies I saw this week that I did enjoy and I recommend to you. And they are out on Blu-ray already, and there's a pretty damn good deal on Amazon for them. I'll post a link to that. They are Martin Bebelon's duology from 2023. The Three Musketeers d'Artagnan and The Three Musketeers Milady. Two feature-length films which form one story.
We're all for one, and one for all, some for each, or none for all.
Of course, it is the wonderful 180-year-old story of the Three Musketeers, written by Alexandre Dumas. It's been made into movies many, many times before. But this one is pretty bloody sweet. I actually went to the cinema to see The Three Musketeers d'Artagnan. Palace Cinemas have released it here in Australia. I don't know whether it was previously shown, but they did let it out to the Sun Cinema in Yarraville, which is my go-to small cinema. I had a pretty good day of it. Went to the 10 a.m. session. The day wasn't particularly sunny. It was a bit wet and damp, but it was a kind of groovy day. Not many people around, 3 people in the cinema, and it's the second largest cinema in the complex of 8 at the Sun, so I'm very happy about that. And I sat down and I watched it with the subtitles, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. The cast is spot on as far as I can see. We don't have Gene Kelly as in previous iterations. We don't have the Richard Lester comedic take on it that we had in 1974 with Michael York and Oliver Reed. We have Francois Civil playing D'Artagnan, Vincent Cassel playing Athos, and he gets some really good plot beats. Romain Duris playing Aramis, and he has some nice bits. Pierre Mamay as Porthos. Linda Corey as Constance, the beloved one of D'Artagnan. Louis Garrel as King Louis. And Eva Green playing Milady de Winter, the main villain of the piece. And one of the things that Martin Bourboulon wanted to do with this film was give the female roles a lot more agency. And Constance gets a lot more agency in this one. Milady de Winter, played by Eva Green, is a fantastic villain. She is evil AF. She is mercenary. She is ruthless. She is very, very accomplished with a sword, with her womanly charms, and with her mind. She is the perfect Bond villain. Yes, I know she played Vesper Lind in Casino Royale, but she would make a kick-ass Bond villain. Of course, we get the story of D'Artagnan travelling to Paris from Gascony to become a musketeer. He's got a letter of recommendation for the head of the Musketeers, Captain de Treville. He gets to be a cadet and then gets involved in some machinations involving the Queen of France's liaison with the Duke of Buckingham in England and the King himself, the Protestant revolt at La Rochelle. Meanwhile, Vincent Cassel's Athos is still grieving the death of his wife. He has a young son who lives in the country with family in his ancestral home. He is a haunted man. Aramis is charming and witty but wants to become a priest. And Romain Duris, who also starred in Bourboulon's Eiffel, playing Louis Eiffel, the guy who created the Eiffel Tower, is perfect in that. And Pio Marmaille playing Porthos. They've twisted Porthos a little bit in a good way. Porthos is unashamedly bisexual, and the other Musketeers go, yeah, that's Porthos. They accept it in the best possible way. And he wakes up after a night of drinking with a beautiful woman on one side of him and a beautiful young man on the other. And I'm there for that kind of thing. I think it's inclusion without sticking it in anyone's face and just going, yes, this character is who he is. And his friends and comrades accept that. I think that's a good message to send. Now, there have been many French adaptations of the Three Musketeers, but this one looks fantastic. The cinematography is magnificent. There's not much in the way of computer-generated effects in this one. The only things they did was go to the locations and take out things like bus stops and modern things. There are all of these castles. They filmed in the VerSUS Palace. They filmed in a whole bunch of old castles around the coast of France. The special effects were just basically there to take out any telephone wires and bus stops, they said, in the movie. And so it looks sharp. It doesn't look artificial at all. And it was a mammoth task. It's an epic film. There were 2,000 costumes, 930 technicians, 650 horses, and 9,000 extras in some of the scenes, particularly around the siege at La Rochelle. They really went to town on this. And there are times in this movie where it feels like you're time traveling to the period. Everything looks exactly the way it should. And then there's, of course, the other important part, the fight choreography. And the fight choreography in this is great. The actors trained for 3 months with sword masters. They trained to ride horses. The movie doesn't do the thing that a lot of American action films do in having quick cuts in the action scenes. There are a lot of long takes in the sword fighting and in the use of pistols and muskets, and in particularly the siege at La Rochelle, which turns up in the second film, Three Musketeers, Milady. A lot of long takes, so it feels a lot more real. It's like our point of view is a character in those situations. And the mobile camera work is terrific. It works really well for that. The relationship between D'Artagnan and Constance is sweet. The actors had a lot of input into that, particularly Francois Civil, who didn't want to be too pushy as D'Artagnan in approaching Constance. And so he made their relationship a lot more tentative, respectful but a little pushy, and there's a nice balance there, and the rapport between the actors works really well. And Milady de Winter is fantastic. Eva Green does some great things. There are times where she puts on a wig and changes clothes and pretends to be another person. She really is dangerous. The real big villain of the piece is not her. It's somebody much closer to the throne. We also get Cardinal Richelieu. We get Eric Ruff playing Cardinal Richelieu, and he doesn't do the over-the-top rubbing your hands together villainous thing. His Richelieu is calculating and precise and knows that he is the eminence grise behind the throne of France, and he knows when to keep in the shadows. And so his character is really interesting, and as the power shifts between various characters, and as the amount of knowledge the Musketeers have and the throne has, Richelieu adapts to those things and throws people under the bus where he needs to. It's a really nice, subtle way of making the character a lot more complex than just being a villain. The first film ends on a cliffhanger, literally a cliffhanger, which I really appreciate. There's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in that. And the second film starts with D'Artagnan trying to get Constance, who has been kidnapped, and there's some very interesting interconnections between them. We find out who Milady de Winter actually is, and there are some interactions between her and her previous life which really land well in this movie. Going into spoilers for something that's 180 years old, they actually changed the cinematography in the second film. They were filmed back to back, but they changed the cinematography because the first film came out and the colour grading they did was a bit dark. So they actually brightened it and changed things for the second film. They didn't bother going back and changing the first one. They're not George Lucas. But the second one looks a lot brighter, and there's a fantastic sword fight in a burning building toward the end of the film. There is a really great scene where the Musketeers infiltrate the castle at La Rochelle. It plays like they're SAS soldiers in the 1600s. They float their equipment in, they kill silently, they ultimately get ambushed, but it really plays like these guys are commandos. And that was mind-blowingly good for me. I appreciated that a hell of a lot. This film is endlessly good fun. It's a solid action-adventure film. It's a film whose story we already know if we know cinema. It brings so much that's fresh to that story. And they didn't bother making a third movie. You don't need trilogies. Duologies are often enough to tell the story. And it's got sword fights. It's got muskets. It's even got a Bible stopping a musket ball, which, fair enough. It's got moments of very funny humour. There are a lot of little subplots, particularly involving Porthos, which I really appreciated. And that lightness balances out the dark and tragic parts of the film. I liked these films a lot. Halfway through watching the second one, which I had a digital copy of, I bought them both on Blu-ray. They're being delivered in about a week, and I will do them in a haul video in future. There's so much good French cinema out there that people in Anglophone markets just don't hear about. Everybody's talking about The Fall Guy and all those other big budget, enormous starred Hollywood films that we're losing the good stuff. We're only going to one end of the buffet, where all the good food's down the other, or some of the more nutritious food's down the other. And I've got to be really aware of that, I think, in future. I've got to step outside the hype cycle and the meme cycle of Hollywood and watch more films like these two. I don't think they're perfect films, but I think they're incredibly entertaining, and they make me feel better than any large Hollywood blockbuster I've watched in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's a lot to be said. Check them out. Let me know if you've seen them. I know that Damien, good friend of the channel, has seen them and recommended Milady to me particularly. Let me know if you've seen the new Three Musketeers movies. And if you haven't, give them a go. If they're on a streaming service somewhere, press the button. You're going to have a good time with them. Some people I know can't manage subtitles. I appreciate that, particularly people with visual impairments. But I'm sure there are dub copies out there. Check these out. You'll have a lovely time. So that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all of this stuff. Become a channel member if you want to. You can also support the channel financially by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next up, I think I will have the haul from Umbrella by Wednesday. And there's some really good deep cut, watch it 2 or 3 times to understand it, science fiction movies and that. And then of course we'll go back to normal science fiction Saturday on Saturday. And I'm already developing ideas for that. So until next time, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch the nines, why the hell not? You're only going to waste an hour and a half. And I'll catch you next time.